Hello everybody, welcome back to Wolfeei. Today we have a fun topic at hand, something I thought about last night, and I was like, perfect time to talk about it. Also, welcome back to Daily December, episode number 3. Today is the 3rd day of December, which means it's December 3rd. Also, kind of in relation to the topic of today's video, which is MCC Twitch Rivals 2025, the EU one for the most part, because that's the, first one that we would expect to happen. There is a Block Wars Twitch Rivals happening today. If you're watching this video within like a few hours of being posted, this event will be taking place. For those of you who don't understand time zones and don't know what a 2 p.m. PT is, that's 5 p.m. Eastern time, Eastern American time. That is 10 p.m. UK time, GMT. 11 p.m. if you're like somewhere Central Europe, I think, or whatever. You all understand what that means. And if you don't know what that means, just look up a time zone converter. This event will run for roughly 4 hours because it's Twitch Rivals, so there will be some extra delays in between the games because that's just how Twitch Rivals works. So yeah, just a little heads up. Here's the teams for anyone who maybe missed them. This is a little recap of the teams that were already announced previously. There's a bunch of fun people all around here, I must say. Fun roster, you'll love to see it. Lovely jubbly. Some very interesting combinations of players. I think everybody will be able to find a combo, or at least a streamer, that they will either enjoy already, or maybe will discover to enjoy long-term in the future. If you like, Minecraft, you can go to the Red team. That's a very Minecrafter team. That's kind of the only like full Minecrafter team. The closest after that is like green, maybe. I don't know. I forgot how much variety is actually in this roster. So anyways, very fun roster altogether, and go tune in. Anyways, on to today's topic. I just did this before starting to record. I went over the past 4 special events, and this is a theory I have that I don't know if it is how it works, but I'm just gonna assume that this at least partially is included. If you don't know, there have been 3 Twitch Rivals events, that being Twitch Rivals in this was in Vegas, then there was a Twitch Rivals in Rotterdam, there was a Twitch Rivals in San Diego, but additionally there was Ender Cup, which if I had to guess, probably gets the same treatment in terms of people getting to play or not, if I had to guess. I don't know if this is true at all. I'm just gonna assume that possibly, maybe. So what we're gonna do for this video is look at what next year's EU Twitch Rivals could look like, because if I recall correctly, after MCC Twitch Rivals EU, there was a bit of discussion regarding people that were interested in maybe playing next time. If you didn't know, for Rotterdam's TwitchCon, EU TwitchCon in 2024, there was also VidCon on the same weekend, which meant that there was a portion of players who weren't available at all, and some players who only showed up really late. I can recall, I think it was Toby, Shelby, and like Michaela maybe, so like some people around that bubble that like arrived in Rotterdam on the day of MCC, like at the early morning or something along those lines, right? They got there just to play MCC pretty much, and that's that overlap of TwitchCon and VidCon shouldn't happen this time, because we already know the TwitchCon dates for Rotterdam 2025, which I think is May 30th or 31st, whatever I think it's 31st, and June 1st. It's the last day of May and the first day of June is the TwitchCon dates. So, assuming that they do another one, which I think will be the case, because I don't know if this is generally agreed upon, but from everyone I've spoken to, it seems like people think that the EU Twitch Rivals 2024 is the best Twitch Rivals that was hosted from MCC, which I can agree with. Obviously, I'm very biased, but I think in terms of general interest and audience, it is the best. It's not the biggest because of the EU time slot, but it is like the most interesting one, I think. And there's definitely something particular about the roster from last Twitch Rivals EU that should be looked at. As you can tell, there's a lot of people who have a gold border outline around their box, and that means that they were newcomers for this event, people who had never touched MCC before this event. And if I remember correctly, almost half of the roster was newcomers. You have if we just count. Obviously, 3 of these teams are mostly comprised of newcomers because they are fully non-English teams, right? There's a French team, that's 4 of them. Then you have Cydonia, which means 5. Then 8 if you include people in green. 10, 11, 13, 17, 19. That's almost half the roster being newcomers, and that doesn't even factor in Ollie, who previously has only played in Rising, so that's someone who I would factor in as a quote-unquote newcomer. And then Eloise, I think, had played in Pride, and also Rising, of course, but also somewhat of a newcomer. I would say Eloise was already considered a main player by then, but obviously we didn't know at the time because of how different MCC has been this year. So half the roster was newcomers last time. And my theory for why this happened is 2 things. I think obviously Twitch probably requested or suggested or whatever for there to be a French, a Spanish, and a German team. I would be surprised if Scott was the one behind at least the French and the German team. Obviously, Shadoon probably was responsible for the invites of the Spanish team, but I would be surprised if Scott was the one who did all the invites for the German and the French team. If that is the case, fantastic, that's really cool, but I'm going to assume that that was Twitch, suggesting for these people to be included. What I hope happens next year is for this to not be the case. I think it'd be fine if there was a non-English team or 2. I don't think there should be 3, because I think it takes away some spots for people who very infrequently play, myself included, and considering the interest that was shown potentially to have more players participate in this event, I feel like a lot of regulars or exclusive players to this event would miss out on being able to play because people who only play MCC in a non-English team who don't really care about MCC play as a full team here. That's my opinion, though. I'm definitely on the biased side of just wanting to see like a lot of the regulars in. I think it is cool to have non-English teams. I want to make that clear. It is cool to have non-English teams, but I think 3 was slightly too much. Also, one thing that I want to say from my perspective with playing, in terms of how integrated these 3 teams, red, purple, and green, were into the roster, I'd say green was by far the most integrated, which makes sense. Obviously, Shadoon knows a lot of people. Coldy was familiar with a handful of people, and Anzi and Shadoon were together a lot of the time. So this team got to talk to at least a handful of people. So they were integrated to an extent and actively tried to, hang out with people or talk to people, etc. The German team was a little 50-50. Before the event happened, I don't think anyone really spoke to them. There wasn't really an opportunity for them to interact with us because they mostly did things by themselves, which is fine. But even during the event, initially it was a little, iffy. After the event, obviously because my team faced off in dodgeball against them, I got to speak to them a little bit, and they seemed fine. They seemed great. They're cool guys, but in terms of general MCC experience, it felt like they weren't fully integrated. It really felt like they were guests in the event. And then finally is the team that I think was the least integrated, but that may just be because I personally didn't speak to them much, is the French team. I had absolutely 0 interaction with the French team for pretty much the entirety of the event, and they didn't really seem like they were actively trying to engage in conversation with a lot of people either. I do think, obviously, Pierre was on QSMP with Toby and Fit, so if I recall correctly, they were chatting. That makes sense. But generally speaking, I didn't really talk to the French team or really notice much from the French team at all. So in my very personal opinion, I would not have a French team next year. I would suggest doing a Spanish team. That makes a lot of sense. German team is debatable. I think you very much run a risk of making a very OP team, because even with Blockwars Twitch Rivals, obviously Basti got subbed out, but both Basti and Papa Platt are good players. I feel like the German scene has a lot of very high-skilled players, and because a lot of English streamers and English-speaking viewers are mostly unfamiliar with that type of crowd, it is very hard to gauge how good these people actually are at Minecraft minigames, and generally MCC. So I think it's very risky to have a German team. Although I will say, from a business popularity standpoint, I am fairly sure the German team was the most popular by a pretty decent margin. So if it were to happen again, I wouldn't be surprised. However, I do think it shoots the skill ceiling up quite a lot because they were by far the best team, mechanically speaking, and on their first event against a bunch of experienced players, obviously half the roster was new, but still, a bunch of other experienced players, they got first by a lot. Like, that, you know, should signify, like, this might be a little bit too strong. Additionally, another thing that should be mentioned about this roster beforehand, because I know I already did this, but there's more to mention. There was rumors that Cydonia was potentially going to put together an Italian team for the next one. I remember that correctly from at least talks being there. I don't remember if it was ever confirmed, but there was talks that potentially, and this is not private talks, this is public talks. I don't know anything from private talks. It was rumored that Cydonia asked or was asked about an Italian team and that might happen. So again, one of these team slots that we have over here could go to Italy. It might just go to Italy, and at that point, hey, fair enough, I guess. I might as well just do it right now. Boom, Italian team. We'll just put them on Lime again or whatever, right? It doesn't really matter. So an Italian team is possible. We don't know if it's confirmed, but I wouldn't be surprised if it were to happen. Then comes the part that I think most of you would care about and what is most relevant to at least the Minecraft YouTube enjoyers. People who showed interest in playing, or people I would expect to show interest in playing, or people I would expect to show up to TwitchCon this time around as opposed to last time, who would potentially play. One person that I could think of, it's actually kind of a handful of people, is Joel. I know that in Twitch Rivals, obviously Joel ended up, coming, and he ended up, playing. But Joel, I think, showed interest from this event taking place. And if I remember correctly, there was also Jimmy, who, Solidarity Gaming that is, who also I think showed interest. And I wouldn't be surprised if, like, Martin would be in that group as well to potentially show interest in playing. So that's a few people who weren't even at TwitchCon, or I hadn't seen at TwitchCon EU before, at least. Well, I've seen Martin, but not Jimmy or Joel. So they could potentially end up playing. Lizzie could be in that batch as well, but I don't know if she'd be interested because she didn't play in Twitch Rivals NA. I don't know if she was even there, but she wasn't playing at least. So unless she goes to the EU TwitchCon and then plays, that could be cool, but we don't know if that's going to be the case. Additionally, there are some people who, like mentioned, weren't at TwitchCon Rotterdam 2024 because of VidCon. Some people that, from the top of my head, I can remember being in at least Paris in 2023, but not in 2024. Rotterdam was like Hannah, I think Sneeg, Phil, like some of those people. There's probably more. That's just some that I could remember. Like, you would expect to maybe, show up, but they weren't here in 2024, but they might be here in 2025. I would expect if not all three of them, two of those three people to probably get in, if I had to guess. Obviously, to mention here, Hannah has been in 3 of the special whatever IRL cool events, if we include all these 4, that being everything besides Twitch Rivals EU, and then Phil has played in 1 of these, so I think he actually is very likely, and then Sneak's played in 2, so I think there's also a chance that Sneak would play. However, I guess that brings up the question of what would the roster look like? Ultimately, we have no clue. I think there is a lot of bias that can be applied to this roster because obviously I think it'd be cool if I got to play. But am I someone who should play in this event? That's a question where half people would agree, half people might not agree. Maybe Scott's Major is someone who is like yes, or maybe no. I don't know. Look, it's a mystery. I don't want to talk about it too much because if I don't want to sound desperate, because I'm not. I understand if there's no room, there's no room, but I would hope that this would probably be the event that I would get to, run it back at some point. However, that also brings up another thing. I personally, for my team, if I got to play, let's just grab me, hypothetically, put me on red, whatever, it doesn't matter, right? Hypothetically speaking, if I got to play, I would want a team that is underpowered. I don't want to win, and I'll explain why. MCC Twitch Rivals, just in general, is a very exclusive event that not everybody has access to, and the prize for winning MCC is a crown, as you can see here. And that's a very rare prize. That is very rare. I wouldn't really want to get two. Not that I would throw to, let someone else win. If I'm in Dodgebolt, I'm obviously going to try to put on a show and actually compete. But I wouldn't mind getting bottom half and not having a chance at winning. That's totally fine by me, because I would like someone else to get the opportunity to win this special prize. I think it'd be really cool. So what I would like to do, and this is probably not possible considering the factors that I have just mentioned of there being probably a lot more demand for this event compared to last year, is I would like to make my own team. I would like to invite some of my friends. For reference, when I was talking to like Sleepy backstage and Rain, obviously if you watch Block Wars, these are people you'd be familiar with over here. Sleepy expressed interest in wanting to play with me at some point for MCC. And I'm like, that would be really cool. I think a lot of people would want to see that. However, and I think the only opportunity for that probably is Twitch Rivals EU, because I know that's when I probably get to play. And last time there was available slots, but I don't know if that'll be the case this time around. I would love to do that, and I'd love to make a really fun team with that. However, that kind of loops back on the issue that I proposed with, if there's a full non-English team joining, I would essentially be doing the same thing. Like, I would make a team and invite 3 friends who don't really, associate with MCC that much. But I think it'd be really fun. But is it fair? I don't think so. So I don't know if that'll ever happen. I might ask Scott about it, but considering what I've talked about and what is potentially going to happen for people attending TwitchCon, I don't know if there's going to be the room for that. Also, there's a bunch of people who I know were at TwitchCon EU in Rotterdam, but hadn't shown interest in playing, I think, or maybe just weren't considered at all. Some people that I could think of, and I'll just put them on the pink tier. If I just very quickly scan through everything, sorry. There would be Sasha, I think, was there, if I remember correctly. Then you would have... Now this gets really tricky because I'm now I'm testing my memory. Also, yeah. So, I think Janet was there last year. I know Smant was there at least. So Smant could be someone that, if asked, could probably play in the event. For the rest, I mean, Kara was there, but she was a caster. I don't think Kara would play despite obviously being available, because she would be there, but she'd probably be a caster. There's people like Akko, who I think was a backup, and like Oppo as well, I think was a backup. I don't know where he's at. Oh, here. So there's a handful of people that were there at TwitchCon last year, but were not. Oh, Puffy was there as well, I think. So that's another person who I don't think played, but could play. And that's another batch of people that like, these are available candidates to pick from. Do we think they're gonna get picked for this event? I don't know. This is so hard to tell. So it's a fun little speculatory thing to bring up of who gets to play MCC Twitch Rivals EU 2025. I think it's something where I'm definitely way too early to this topic, but for Daily December, these are topics that I wanted to talk about anyways at some point, so I might as well do it right now. And I think, honestly, we might have a very interesting event on our hands for 2020 for Twitch Rivals 2025. I think people might not have realized how cool this roster could end up being, because I think this Twitch Rivals roster was generally pretty awesome. I think Ender Cup obviously was really cool too. And I think you would get some of the people, obviously Twitch Rivals NA has a lot of exclusive players because they are NA based and probably wouldn't travel to EU. For example, Scar obviously is unable to, and there's probably a handful of other like Hermits and etc. that probably wouldn't really travel that far. But there's a handful of people from this that I think could play in the EU Twitch Rivals. There's some people generally that I've mentioned that definitely are candidates to potentially play if they are interested. So I wonder, what would you like to see? I'm curious as to what would happen. I think there's a lot of options. I really, really hope that Scott, I know Scott sometimes watches the videos. I hope he sees this, because I honestly just think this is really cool. It's really cool as an event organizer to see general interest in an event before it's even announced, because I know that this is going to be one where a lot of people are interested. This is just pretty much confirmed going to be a high in demand event, and I think it's going to be a really good one. I think it'll be really cool. Another thing that I want to bring up is considering this tier, if I had to assume that this is at all relevant for people getting in, maybe you would see some of the people in this tier benched. These are people who've played every Rivals and also Ender Cup. But then again, there's also some very, regular participants in here. Like Scott obviously is not benching himself. I think Toby's guaranteed to play. Shelby's guaranteed to play. Then between Becky, Fruit, Gucky, and Callum, I think they're all favorable to put in. But if it really comes down to it, I think it would make sense if they get benched in favor of someone who is more exclusive to get a chance to play. For reference, if Fruit, is able to play, but in terms of balancing, I guess me, in terms of stats, is not close, but close enough. If it's between Fruit or me, Fruit plays MCC 80% of the time in the year. I play MCC 20% of the time in the year. I would say that it would make sense to put me in over Fruit. If, now I'm going to have to make up some comparisons. If it's between like Jeremy and Becky, which I don't think is super comparable, it's close enough, I could see Jeremy getting in over Becky because Jeremy only plays MCC Twitch Rivals EU. That's the only event he is really available for out of the big 4 ones that have been mentioned. I guess 2 of these are the same type. But out of the big 3 types of events, this is the only one Jeremy would be able to, really get into. And even someone like Jimmy, I guess, who may attend as well for like a one-off Twitch stream. Between him and like a Gucky, I could see Jimmy obviously getting in over Gucky because this is like the only, well, it's not the only time that he would be available for this, but this is the first time he's going to be available for this. So it would make sense if he's prioritized, etc. So you understand what I mean? This is a very difficult topic. I might make a second follow-up video sometime early in the year just to, talk about it a bit more. Maybe we'll get more info. Maybe we have more ideas. Maybe this will spark some discussion. I think there are so many options for this event, and making predictions for this is going to be difficult. Obviously, by the time the event gets announced, which is probably early May or late April, probably early May, we will probably find out who's getting, in this roster. Some people will be confirmed early on, probably some people you would expect, like Scott, Shelby, Toby, etc. However, it's going to be very interesting to see who gets to play. Anyways, that's my rant. Not rant. It's not a rant because I'm not complaining. I'm just such an interesting thing that I thought about yesterday when I was in the shower. I was like, wait a minute, next Rivals is gonna be kind of crazy, and just wanted to talk about it. Anyways, go watch Blockrush Twitch Rivals if you haven't already. These are the teams. This is the time that the event's happening. This is 5 p.m. Eastern, by the way, 2 p.m. Pacific time. Here's the teams. Let me know your thoughts on this whole concept. This is not a team, by the way. This whole idea. And we'll see what happens. Anyways, thank you all for watching. I'll see you later. Goodbye.